Got another free pressure washer, Troy Bilt, posted an hour ago, and it's sitting out front of the house. Well, obviously the pressure washer was still there, and I got it 2700 PSI Troy Bilt. Let's make sure we got some oil in it. Yes, we do, just above the full mark. Let's see if there's any fuel in it. Yes, there is. And before we try to start it, let's check the air filter. Doesn't look bad, pretty clean actually. On, off. That is on. Got water flowing through the wand while I try to start it so pressure doesn't build up inside of the pump. Let's try some starting fluid in the carburetor. See if it fires up and runs for just a second. When it kicked on for just a second, I could feel pressure building in the wand. So the pump seems like it's working. I'll bet you that the main jet on the carburetor is clogged up. And once I clean that out, this will be good and running. To get the carburetor off, the air filter housing has to come off. There's probably a breather line or a vacuum line attached to the back, and there it is right there. Also 2 wires going to the kill switch. I'm just going to leave those attached. I want to take the fuel line loose and drain the tank. I have a clean container to drain that fuel into, and that will give us an indication as to whether or not there is dirt or water in the fuel. Let me take the cap off, see if that'll help it drain out faster, and yes, it did. I can see already that there is water in the fuel. I don't see any dirt, but I do see water. That's me blowing through the mouth of the gas tank just to make sure all the gas is out. When I pour this in, the gasoline should immediately float on top, so we'll see the water on the bottom. Shouldn't take, whoa, hold on. Shouldn't take long to happen, and there it goes. So here in the glass container, you can clearly see the difference. You can see the water on the bottom and the gasoline floating on top, and that is the same thing that would have happened in the tank. The water would have been on the bottom. It would have made its way through the fuel line into the carburetor, and with water in the carburetor, the engine is not going to start. It's not going to run. I took this plastic piece out of the way that was held on by an 8mm screw, and you can see right here the remains of a spring. See where it's hooked in right there, so I will need a replacement spring for that. Now 2 bolts holding the carburetor on, and they are either T30 Torx or 8mm. And the bolt on this side you cannot get to with this setup. Ooh, let me try to get the Torx in there. The red wire coming from the kill switch, that's grounded on this bolt, so don't forget that. Now 2 linkages to disconnect. Get it off that one in the back. Now the one in the front. There's a 13mm nut at the bottom of the bowl, and I'm going to drain whatever's in the bowl into this jar. Not sure why that would be tinted green, because the fuel in the tank, it did not have a green tint to it. So this bolt that held the bowl on, this functions as the main jet, I believe. There are holes at the base, so we're going to need to clean those holes out. Right now I want to get this float off and the needle valve, which means removing this pin, so that should slide out. We should be able to lift the float straight up. Something is holding it, and it may be that the needle valve is stuck. That is what it was. That needle valve was stuck in, that's what was holding it. So we will get all of these passageways cleaned out with carb spray. On the main jet, right at the base, there are holes going all the way through. And look at all that. That was blocking that passageway. That is dirt. I can feel the grit. There should be a hole down through the middle, and that's clogged up as well. Time for some carb spray. When I spray the carb spray down through the top, you can see a little bit coming out that hole on the side. What I mentioned earlier, the green tint of the gas that was in that bowl, I bet it came from the oxidation of this brass main jet. See right there on the side where it's green? If I had to guess, I'd say that's where that green tint came from. The holes are completely clear now. This one through the side, and also the hole through the top. Now on the carb, I'm going to clean out where the fuel line comes in. So next morning, getting the carburetor put back together, the needle valve slides onto the float right there, and the float slides over that centerpiece, and the needle valve goes down in that hole. Now the pin goes back in, first through the metal, then the plastic, and through the metal on the other side. Now we get the bowl back on with the gasket in position, and there's a whole other story related to this gasket, because I don't know if you noticed earlier, but I screwed up by leaving that gasket on when I started using the carb spray, and the gasket absorbed some of the solvent, and that gasket expanded. It got bigger. So here's a shot of how much it expanded and how big it got. And you can see how much it expanded right there on the left. See how much it's sticking out. So that was a problem, because then it would not fit on the carb bowl. What it amounts to is I put it in boiling water for 10 minutes and I put it in the oven at 350 for 10 minutes, and that somehow released the solvent from the rubber and brought the gasket back down to the normal size. So my advice to you, if you're cleaning a carburetor like this that has a bowl, when you get that bowl off, take the gasket off. Do not get carb spray or brake clean, whatever you're using. Don't get any of that on the gasket, because that is going to deform the gasket. It's going to make it bigger and it will not fit. Carburetor's clean, but there are a couple of things I want to do before I put it back on. This recoil, it was hanging up a little bit when I tried to start it earlier. There are 3 8mm nuts holding that on. You can see the rust on this and the rust down in this bowl. This thing's been sitting outside in the rain, and that probably explains why there was water in the fuel. I want to check the gap between the flywheel and the ignition coil. The gap between the ignition coil and the flywheel should be about the thickness of a business card or a recipe card like this. That will not slide in between. I want to adjust that. I need to loosen this bolt and this stud, and they are each 12mm. I don't need to take them all the way out, just loosen them up. With those loose, I can pull the ignition coil back and slip that recipe card in between, and I'm going to spin the flywheel. When the magnet spins around in front, we'll see this drawn in. See that side pop in a little bit, and we're waiting for that side to pop in. There it went. So now we can tighten these back down. Pull the card out. Sometimes if it's stuck like that, you can turn the flywheel and that'll help you get it out. And now, having done that, a proper gap is set between the ignition coil and the flywheel. But one more thing I want to do, I want to clean that magnet off. And now some WD-40. Let's get this gas tank off, make sure that's clean. To get the gas tank off, this stud has to come off. That's 12mm, and there's a bolt down here that's 10mm. And the date of manufacture on this pressure washer, February 2013. And now the tank should come off. Not yet, I missed one. This stud on this side's got to come off also. Recoil is actually fine. There's plenty of tension on that. And the rust is actually not on the recoil. That must be from the rusty water that collected in that bowl, because the recoil is plastic. Now I'm just going to load it up with WD-40 and hope some of this makes its way down to the metal band that provides the tension. One thing on the fuel tank down there at the bottom, see right in the middle, there is a filter. So if you're cleaning out your fuel tank, you need to make sure that filter is clean. Everything's dry, but I forgot about the spark plug. Got it cleaned up, and the gap is set to 0.03 inches. WD-40 in the spark plug boot, just in case some water got in there when I washed off the engine. Don't forget on the other bolt, the one on the right, that this wire from the kill switch goes on the back of that. And remember also, I'm missing a spring from here to here. And I think I have a spring. It's probably not the right one, but I'll put that on and we'll go from there. Everything's going to go back on just like it came off. Let me get it off the table, get it outside, put some fuel in it, and crank it up and see if it works. I think it will. I did have a spring, and I've got it on. As you can see, I've been playing with the tension. I bent this bar up, and I shortened the spring. I've got it running pretty well. Pump does work, so cleaning out the carb, cleaning out the fuel tank, messing with this a little bit. Free pressure washer runs pretty well. Let me show you that.